Welcome to Mind the Gap, the podcast that explores the spaces between what we think and how we feel. In this week's episode, Michael dives into the uneasy experience of being judged, not for our shortcomings, but ironically, for our strengths. Have you ever felt your knowledge, your education, or even your confidence being treated not as assets, but as threats? Today, Michael unpacks the hidden biases we all carry, the subtle signals we send, and the paradox of being judged for having too much of something good. Drawing from psychology, philosophy, and personal reflection, he challenges us to notice how often we judge, and how it feels to be judged, simply for knowing or achieving. Here's Michael with When Knowledge Threatens, the paradox of being judged on Mind the Gap.
I was in a conversation recently, a casual enough setting, and I realized with a bit of a jolt that the person I was speaking with had already decided who I was. Not based on what I'd done or what I was saying, but based on how I spoke, what I knew, and, oddly enough, the fact that I'd had, at one stage, access to education. It wasn't anger or aggression I felt, more a slow dawning of discomfort. That uneasy awareness that, without saying it out loud, they'd place me in a category, one I didn't choose. And in that moment, I felt something that many people feel all the time. Judged not by character, but on cues, age, gender, race, accent, intelligence, class. Things that should never define us, but often do. Discrimination in all forms is rarely straightforward. It's not always the grand, obvious injustice that makes the headlines. Often it's small. A glance, a pause, a voice that changes pitch when speaking to someone perceived as less powerful or more powerful. Sometimes it's the seat we're offered or not offered. And sometimes, as I experienced, it's the feeling that your knowledge is being treated not as something valuable, but as something threatening. In this episode, I want to explore both the obvious and the subtle, the top-down and bottom-up, the way in which we, as human beings, judge each other. And I say we deliberately because this isn't just about being judged, it's also about when we judge, when we assume, when we decide that someone is too much of something or not enough of something else. It's a mirror we all need to look into. Let's start at the top, with top-down discrimination. This is what we often think of when we hear the word discrimination, the systemic and structural forces that oppress. It's the manager who doesn't promote a woman because she might go on maternity leave. It's the boardroom where every voice has the same accent and anyone who sounds different is subtly dismissed. It's the job interview where the candidate's name, skin colour, address or school becomes a quiet disqualifier. There's a weight to top-down discrimination. It's backed by power, policy, and tradition. But bottom-up discrimination, that's murkier. It's the subtle reversal, when individuals push back against what they perceive as privilege, and in doing so, create a different kind of judgment. That moment I had when someone resented my accent or education wasn't about power. It was about perception. About a story they'd told themselves, that I somehow thought I was better. I didn't, but it didn't matter. Carl Jung might call this a projection, the shadow we cast onto others. We see it in them when we cannot accept it in ourselves. And so a person who feels small may resent those who appear confident. Someone who's been denied education might mock those who had access to it. And the tragedy is both people are now trapped. One by their judgment, the other by their silence. Jung wrote,
"Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves."
The Stoics, too, have something to say here. Marcus Aurelius reminds us,
"You always own the option of having no opinion."
And Epictetus urges,
It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters.
These are hard teachings in a world that constantly asks us to take sides, but they point to a way of rising above the noise, or choosing not to retaliate, not to carry resentment, and not to internalize other people's misjudgments. Psychologists talk about implicit bias, those automatic, unconscious attitudes we hold towards others. These biases are everywhere. We associate youth with inexperience, old age with irrelevance, certain accents with intelligence or lack thereof. In Ireland, as in many places, the sound of someone's voice can tell you their postcode, their class, and, unfairly, their perceived worth. As Fintan O'Toole once wrote,
"In Ireland, accent is still the fastest way to judge intelligence, education, and even trustworthiness. Accent becomes a social shibboleth, a way to sort people quickly into mental boxes."
But here's the difficult bit. We all carry these biases, every single one of us. And that's not a condemnation. It's a starting point. Because once we see the biases, we can choose to do something about them. We can slow down our reactions. Ask ourselves why we flinched when someone said that, why we interrupted them, why we assumed they wouldn't get it. And this is where emotional intelligence enters the room. Daniel Goleman speaks about self-awareness as the cornerstone of emotional intelligence. Without it, we're flying blind. But with it, we can notice our assumptions in real time. We can catch ourselves. And in catching ourselves, we can grow. Goleman says,
If your emotional abilities aren't in hand, then no matter how smart you are not going to get very far.
I think often of the phrase, the benefit of the doubt. It sounds so mild, doesn't it? But it's revolutionary. Giving someone the benefit of the doubt means suspending judgment. It means resisting the urge to place them in a category before they've even opened their mouth. It means listening, really listening. And maybe, just maybe, that's the work of a lifetime. To meet people without armour. To see them not as symbols of something, race, gender, status, but as fellow human beings. Messy, complex, contradictory humans. There'll always be those who judge from above and those who judge from below. But our task, I think, is not to join either. Our task is to see clearly, to feel deeply, and to respond wisely. As Viktor Frankl once said,
Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom.
so this week, I invite you to notice. Notice how you're seen. Notice how you see. And in those moments of tension, those quick judgments, those silent assumptions, see if you can find that space. The space to pause. The space to be free of bias. Until next time, please mind the gap.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode of Mind the Gap. If today's conversation resonated with you, or even made you think twice about how quickly we judge, please share this episode with someone else who might appreciate it. And remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. Until next time, pause, notice, and keep minding the gap.